So I'm Alyssa Preece, and I'm an intermediate science teacher at Duff Allen Central Elementary. I've taught science for the last 7 years, and there was a year that I was moved to math. I was already doing kind of like flipped classroom videos, so I was very excited to learn about the Modern Classroom Project and go through this process. So the problem of practice, so why I like Modern Classroom Project is student engagement, self-pacing for students, because you always have those students who work faster and grasp concepts more quickly than others, while you have other students who need reteaching or need more time on a certain concept. Blended learning, so I teach science, so everything just can't just be online. I do offer hands-on experiences and experiments and things like that that help to blend this online and in-person learning structure. Modern Classroom Project, because it's their own self-pacing, there's time for small group instruction, there's time to pull kids together and work with them in a small group or one-on-one. This also allows for more of mastery of the standard. So if a student doesn't understand something, they can definitely retry something, and you'll see that in my plan that I crafted earlier this summer. So they really can master the standard, and then you also get a true gauge of where these students are academically. So step one of the Modern Classroom Project was mastery-based grading. So what I was supposed to do was create an end-of-lesson assessment that efficiently and effectively measures student understanding and develop policies and procedures that support regular revision and reassessment of mastery. So I chose to go with this is usually the first standard that I teach, which is for LS 1-1, molecules to organism structures and processes. So with the NGSS standards, they're supposed to construct an argument that plants and animals have internal and external structures that function to support growth, survival, behavior, and reproduction. Okay. So what I did is I went through and I broke this standard down into very small chunks. So what should they know first, second, third, and then progress all the way through. So the whole goal of Modern Classroom Project was to have 3 videos and 3 video lessons and the items that go with it, plus the mastery checks. I went ahead and did my whole first unit. Just because I was in that rhythm of doing videos and all that good stuff. So I'll give you a sample of my first learning check. Objective was to identify and give examples of external plant structures that function to support survival, growth, and behavior. And so what I ended up doing was doing each lesson I did one overarching lesson of all the structures of a plant and their functions, and then I did an individual video for each structure and their function and went more in depth with it. So my mastery check plan, which was something that I had to do with the Modern Classroom Project. So the plan that I crafted was that students can attempt to demonstrate their mastery as many times as they would like, which is usually not what you see in a classroom. Usually it's a one and done. But in my plan, I have also allowed for the fact that if they fail a mastery check, then they're going to have to do some work to show me that they're ready to take it again, that they're not just, okay, well, I failed it. Now I got the answer, so I'm going to go back and retake this and, pass it. No, they got to show me that they've done some work. Okay. So whether that is they're doing guided notes, showing that again, watching a video again, because sometimes when you watch something twice, you pick up something that you didn't see the first time. I know that I do that with movies. And then if they are unable to still pass the mastery check after going back and rewatching the video, doing some guided notes, talking with a peer, then we're going to do some one-on-one or some small group teaching with them so that they can master that content, okay, and an alternative mastery check, and MC stands for mastery check, for them to do so. So the reassessment plan. So on any mastery check that's incorrect, they're going to have to be able to show me they've done some work, and then they are also going to have to explain why they got something wrong, and then also take a new mastery check, okay? However, there are times when I'm busy either with a small group or a one-on-one session, and these kids are turning in their mastery checks. And at that moment, I don't have time, I can't stop what I'm doing and look at their mastery check and say, okay, well, you get to move on to the next lesson. So what I have them do is just go ahead and move on to the next lesson. And so there's no downtime. They're not waiting on me for anything. They're just going ahead and moving on, because it's not going to hurt them to move on. And if they do have to come back and revisit their mastery check, maybe now they've gained some more information. They have a better understanding for moving on than they did when they first took it. And also there's no downtime this way. So there's no wasted class time, and they can just continue to move on and work. So here's some mastery checks that I created for my first lesson, my unit 1 lesson. Okay, it's all about functions and structures. So step 2 was to do instructional videos. So what we were supposed to do was record clear, concise, engaging instructional videos, plan instructional videos that effectively and efficiently explain a learning objective. So it talked about keeping your videos very short so that you keep the attention span of your students, and then enhance their video by some sort of engagement. Okay. So something that I did with mine was so like all of my lesson slides were already written out the way that their notes are. And so my very first video, I learned my lesson. So what I ended up doing was I had all these blanks for them to fill in. Well, I also left my Google Slides presentation, and as I was recording my video and teaching, and I was using the annotation feature, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to keep my video under 6 to 9 minutes. So, and also that's a lot of writing. It's a lot of pausing and stopping, especially those kids that, take a lot longer to write things down. It would be a lot for them to pause. And I was like, oh my goodness, they're not going to get what I want them to get out of this. So I learned my lesson. And so then I had more of fill in the blank stuff, so that I was not writing the entire time that I was teaching, because sometimes it was lagging and that caused the whole issue. So also I had some things that would fly in and be a different color, and that would kind of denote to the kids that that's what they were supposed to have for their notes. So I did lots and lots of videos, and I re-recorded myself several times. So anyway, I used Screencastify. That was the one that I liked the best, Screencastify, to record all of my lessons. And then what I would do also is I would upload them into Edpuzzle. So not only were the kids watching my video and doing guided notes at the same time, but they could also watch this in Edpuzzle. And then it had open-ended questions that would pause the video at certain times. So I don't know if you've ever worked with Vocabulary, but Vocabulary kind of does the same thing. Like you can turn on the discussion feature, and so as the video is playing, it would stop at crucial points and then answer some questions. Well, Edpuzzle kind of does the same thing. So what some of my videos that I would do is I would have them in Edpuzzle and have open-ended questions or multiple choice questions pop up, and they would have to answer those before they could move on, in addition to guided notes, and sometimes in place of guided notes, just so that they had that engagement there. And also that was a quick assessment for me to know if they're really mastering this content, or are they really watching this video, or are they really listening and grasping what's going on. So I also talked about something that I did in my very first video is I left too many blank spaces for the kids to write, which took up a lot of time, and I learned my lesson. So I did really like that Edpuzzle feature to add my own questions and make it feel more like a vocabulary video. I really love vocabulary. Also, I like this because instruction can continue on the days that I'm not there. So they're not waiting for, a sub to tell them what to do. They already know what to do because they're already used to this process. They come in, they get their computers out, they start working. I've had to miss at least one day a month. And then this month I've had to miss a whole week because of my oncology appointments. I had acute myeloid leukemia last summer. And so I'm 1 year out and I'm in remission, but I still have all of these follow-up tests and things because of the certain mutations that I have. They're afraid that it's going to come back. So I was out for an entire week to do a bone marrow biopsy and other things. And so instruction still continued in my classroom on the days that I wasn't there. The kids didn't have any questions as to what they were supposed to do. They already knew what they were supposed to do. They went in, they found their videos, they started their guided notes, they could find everything in the room. So really, it's worked and made, having somebody else in my room, it made it a lot easier on them and also the kids because they already know what's to be expected. And it's nothing that, I'm not leaving some big packet that's not meaningful to them. This is meaningful work that they are doing. So the self-pacing plan. So we to classify things that students must do in order to complete a lesson, things they should do and things they should aspire to do. Now, not every lesson has to have a must, should, and aspire. Some lessons are just strictly must do's, and then at the very end, there's an aspire to do, because you always have those kids who fly through a unit or they have already a pretty good background knowledge so that they can work through the content a lot faster. And also with the student pacing plan, we also had to create systems for tracking student progress and then design concrete strategies and encourage authentic collaboration between students, and then also plan how to motivate our students, and then also design for them to be able to reflect on their learning and growth. So my self-pacing plan, let me move myself over here. So this is what I wrote this summer, was that for the science classroom, every unit will be comprised of must-do lessons, activities, labs, and mastery checks. And then they'll have some should-dos and some form of research, extension activities, and articles, and then aspire to do some kind of project-based learning at the very end. So this unit that I taught for this summer was all about plants. Well, 2 days before school started, we got a brand new curriculum that started with energy. So I was building this plan as I was flying at this time. So something that my kids were working on that week that I were out, some of them were working on, was their aspire to do. And so they were creating their own town that was using, different forms of energy and how it was being converted and all of that good stuff. And so there were little mini lessons that went along with it. Now, not every kid did the project-based learning, and that's completely fine. That was more of an aspire to do, an extra credit kind of deal. Now I do know that they did recommend for the grading that, people who just create just must do's or, get a certain grade, aspire to do. We're not there. So I'm still doing points based. So if you get 100%, then, that's what goes in the grade book, but, and aspire to do. But I did tell my kids that I would give them extra credit when they got to the aspire to do. And then I've got kids that are working on that aspire to do, even though now we've moved on to a different unit, and that's completely fine. They can do that at home if they wish so that they can improve their grade. That's completely fine with me. I also paced this lesson. So I said that this unit should take them around 12 class periods. Now, some kids may take longer, some may take less. And then, sometimes you have to account for things like surprise assemblies or when the fish and wildlife people show up and you're not sure that they're supposed to be there that day. So sometimes we did have to adjust how many class periods something should take, just because, it is a school and sometimes you do forget and things do come up. So that's kind of what I put for my students was, okay, we should complete this in this many days. So they kind of knew where they should be. And then like on the board, and I'll show you my pacer and my student tracker. So here's kind of a layout of the lessons that I had, and I said how many class periods it should take them to do this. I have my kids for science for 4th grade about 65 minutes and 65 uninterrupted minutes. So that makes a difference. There's no breaks in between them. So they can work pretty quickly. As soon as they come in, they know what to do. They already get it out, and they're started as soon as they walk in the room. There's no downtime with this. And so here's also lesson 3, 4, 5, end of unit, and then, the end of unit assessment. So with the progress tracker, so I didn't really like putting my students' names up on the board because I don't want anybody to make another kid feel bad that they're behind, especially, because you do have those students, 1, who struggle, and 2, you have, special ed students who need that extra help and support to be able to work through and to actually master content. So I didn't want anybody to make anybody else feel bad. So what I ended up doing was just label them as student 1, 2, 3, and they know their numbers. So they know who they are. And it's just between me and them. They know that I know where they are. And I keep a check sheet with me on my clipboard. And so like if they're turning in a mastery check, then I write it down. So like it's not like all over the place and going in and finding this Google form and that Google form and who turned this in and who didn't turn that in. So as soon as they come to me, they turn it in, I mark it down, and then, I can either grade it right then if I'm not doing small group or one-on-one, or if I'm not like, helping another student, because sometimes we have technology issues and it logs them out, or, their password has somehow been reset. I mark it down so that I know, and then I can go in and I can just update it. So I'm not clicking all over Google Classroom trying to figure out where on this planet did this child turn this in, and did they turn this in, and did they resubmit it, and whatever. So if it's on paper, then I can just quickly like write down, okay, well, student 7 turned in mastery check 3. I need to grade that. Okay, now tomorrow they can be on lesson 4 and they're on pace, or they're ahead of pace, or whatever. And then, it's all color coded, which is fabulous. And it's very quick and easy just to do it. And then you do have those kids who are on pace the entire time, and you have those kids who get ahead of pace and then somehow fall behind because they miss a couple of days, or this is something they can do at home. So they're not coming in saying, okay, well, I missed yesterday, so what am I supposed to be doing? So something they can work on at home, because they all have computers. They're all one-to-one. So we also had to think about opportunities for collaboration. So I said that I was going to have some peer support. Students will be expected to collaborate with their peers. So like if they are not doing well on a mastery check, or they didn't pass the mastery check, then they have to go back and they either have to watch the video again, complete some guided notes. They can discuss with a peer, like, why on this planet did I get this wrong? What can I do to make this better? And really have a good discussion with them. Or can you teach me how to do this? Can you teach me? Can you explain this to me? So the way that I have my kids sitting is in a Kagan strategy. So I've got a high, a medium high, medium low, and then a low. But, not every classroom is that way. So sometimes I have 2 high students next to each other, because, that's the way classrooms work out. So that's kind of the way the Kagan strategy is supposed to work. So that there's somebody at that table that is probably ahead of pace and has already done this lesson, or maybe they can just explain it better. Maybe they're currently working on that lesson. So students are able to talk to each other and help each other figure things out and explain things to one another. Now, you might be interested in how this works in a science classroom, because you're like, my thought was, if I'm having them do a self-paced model, what about the days that I want to do experiments? Like, I can't have my room a perpetual mess, because that will drive me insane. And that was my thought. I was like, I'm going to have to figure out a way to do this. So what I would do is, on their little pacing guide, it'd be like, okay, lesson 1 should take this many days, lesson 2. Okay, well, on Thursday of this week, we're going to do a whole class experiment. Okay. And, that experiment might take just 30 minutes and then they can go back and start working, but everybody will have that experience so that I can guide them through that. Now there are some experiments that are set up like all the time, and that's fine because it doesn't it doesn't really require lots of materials to be drug out all the time. So it's not a perpetual mess. But like with the energy conversions, we made ramps and we did transfer of energy and we did some Rube Goldberg machines and we did chain reactions, that sort of thing. And if I'd left those materials out and they could just build these things anytime they wanted, that would just have stuff everywhere. And that would really drive me insane. So we had a day that was, set for doing ramps this day. And this next day we did these, transfer of energy, chain reactions, so that, I could separate my materials because my room is not that huge and counter space is very precious, as you can imagine, especially with having baskets for each class to turn in their mastery checks and to also pick up all the things that go with each lesson that are on paper. Now there are things that are on Google Classroom. So like the articles, are uploaded to Google Classroom. I do have certain things that are Google Forms. I do have, not everything's just on paper, but like the mastery checks for sure are, just so that when they hand them to me, I can mark it on my clipboard. So then that gives me a quick way to update my progress tracker without having to look over 7 different Google Forms, like who's on what today, because the task gets a little daunting, right? And then, with experiments and having all these different materials that are required and counter space is so very precious, it is very important to think and plan where things are going to fall and how many days you think each lesson should take and when you're going to do a whole group something, because doing a whole group something is completely fine. It's part of that blended learning where they're online and then and doing in-person hands-on things at the same time. All right. So to motivate them was that pacing tracker, and then also have like a reward system. So, sometimes the kids say things that are really super great, and so they get a trip to the treasure box. And you would think 4th and 5th graders, some of them, they think they're too cool for school and, they don't want to go. That's fine. But then you have those kids who really thrive on that, recognition, like I'm ahead of pace, I've done so well. Or some kids, they may not be ahead of pace, they may be behind pace, but they have like blown me out of the water with their response. So I'm like, okay, you go get yourself something out of that treasure box because you've done something fantastic. And then as a district requirement, we're required to have 2 grades in per week. Now, this can be kind of daunting when you have those kids working at their own pace because some of them are behind and some of them are ahead. And, so I have the policy of soft 0. So if they've not yet turned it in, it's a 0. But as soon as they turn it in, I will change that. That's not a problem. And they know, and they understand that. So they know not to freak out just yet. And it's just for, if I think that they should be on lesson 3 by Friday and I have 2 grades in, then, I'll just put in a soft 0 for that lesson 3 until they turn it in, which may be Monday, and that's fine. So learning design plan. So our goal for this was to present videos and notes and other student materials in a clear, well-organized learning system. So this is the whole having your room set up in a way that is conducive so that this works very well. So the last 4 years, at least, we've done Google Classroom. I was out most of last year because, I was in treatment for my leukemia. But however, I'm very comfortable with the use and features of Google Classroom and being able to roll out things to certain kids at certain times. So like if I have a kid that's ahead of pace, I'll go ahead and release lessons to them so that it isn't so overwhelming for the kids who are just on pace. And then I have my on pace lessons that release, that are already scheduled to release on certain days. That way it's just, they're working. And everything, things are available as they need them. And some students may need them a little faster than others, and that's completely fine. Some things also, I just have it already posted in Google Classroom, but it's hidden from the kids, and then I'll make it available for them whenever they need it, like such as our whole group experiments. Maybe I've got a question I want to ask them, like for afterwards. So I already have that in there, and then I'll just publish it after we've already done that whole group thing, just in case something comes up, like there is a fire drill during the middle of my lesson, or maybe we're doing a lockdown drill, or maybe we've had a surprise assembly that, you know, either I've forgotten about or I didn't get an email about. So it's completely fine. So also with this, we are a CSI school right now. And so we have to do weekly data PLCs with the ladies from KDE. And so this also helps me be able to track, like, you know, so 75% of my kids got a, you know, mastered lesson one's objective, while 95% of my kids, you know, mastered the objective for lesson two. That way that I have this data to be able to share with my data PLC as we move through and then do unit assessments.